Podcasting is a profound gesture. It says, we share the same burden. Negative reviews are our only enemy. This is what we record. The hand that holds the microphone holds no weapon. Do you understand this?
No.
You will.
It's Siona's first podcast, you know. She's got
Yeah.
You got to get a couple dozen under your belt first.
Yeah, she's like, oh my god, all positive reviews so far. Plato's
Oh
like,
my.
just you fucking wait. Welcome to Gom Jabbar, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We will be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. My name is Leo.
And my name's Abu.
And today on the show, we are continuing to slither our 7-meter-long bodies through the sandy journey that is God Emperor of Dune.
Ooh, you painted a beautiful picture there for us.
Thank you,
God Emperor of
slithering.
Dune, baby. Okay, well, before we continue slithering, let's pause for a second and
Sure.
take care of some housekeeping.
I'm grateful for the pause. I felt the worm essence bubbling up.
So, as always, today's episode will contain no spoilers beyond the pages and books that we've covered thus far. As long as you have done the reading for today, you're good to go.
Indeed. And, of course, as always, a huge 7-meter-long slithering shout-out
That's right.
to our Kwisatz Haderach level patron, Case Aiken.
Case, you are the oxygen superconductor in our chests.
There's a fire in our hearts, Case. And it's you.
And it's you.
You're always burning. You never go out. Of course, our gratitude to Case extends to all of our patrons as well, who make what we do possible.
That's right.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Now, y'all know the game plan for these book club episodes, but just in case you forgot, we will begin today with a summary of the reading, then dive into a couple of takeaways, and wrap up by chomping down on some yummy spice morsels. So, before we jump into today's summary, let's take a quick breather, but don't go anywhere, folks, because when we come back, we're talking about chapters 39 and 40. We will see you in a minute.
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, let's get into our first chapter from the reading. And that chapter is chapter 39.
Yes.
And in this chapter, we rejoin Leto and Siona out in the deep desert. It is still testing day. This is still happening.
Right.
Now, this chapter is pretty light, summary-wise. It's a lot of walking and talking. They're having like a quarterly review, getting some coffee on the go. And throughout the chapter, Leto is just getting more and more incensed that Siona won't put her fucking mouth flap on.
Put the goddamn flap on!
Literally, at one point, he's like, you thirsty? She's like, why?
Why do you
God
bring that
damn
up?
it, Siona,
Yeah.
you're so stupid.
I found this really funny.
It was so funny to see just this kind of ongoing tension. But also, I kind of loved this little moment where he's following her at a distance, right? And he keeps thinking about her not having her mouth flap on.
Yeah.
He spends some time, quote, shaping the necessary decisions for a replacement should she fail.
Right.
End quote.
Right.
And I had this like very clear image in my head of him like doing the numbers, like, okay, and then I'll breed this person with that. And her being like, what are you doing back there, Leto? And he's like, oh God.
Are you
enough.
thirsty yet?
Thirsty again? Question mark. Certainly not planning your replacement. I mean, mourning your death. I mean, enjoying the breeze.
Yeah, he's definitely doing a lot of backup planning, just in case, because
Yeah.
it's looking like Siona may never put this goddamn mouth flap on. And if she doesn't, she will die.
It's like she didn't even listen to Moneo. What's the point of
It's
having
like
a
she's
major
young
domo
and
father?
impetuous.
It's like she's a rebel. You know, it's almost as if. I'll also say it's been a while since we put on our tinfoil hats, but
Oh,
yep. Get it adjusted. Get it chin strap. Chin
Oh,
strap.
I forgot the chin
Okay.
strap.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chin strap.
Click.
Okay. Mouth flap. Tinfoil
What? I'm not
mouth
thirsty,
flap.
Leo.
Okay. So, okay. Did anybody else out there in listener land, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
for you too, Abu,
Mm-hmm.
did you catch the kind of like subtle tip of the hat, tip of the wormy hat to Liet Kynes in this
Mm-hmm.
chapter?
Mm-hmm.
This, like, I don't know. I found myself really locked in on this. We get Liet's March, the song
Right.
that Siona's like, I fucking love that song. Sing it again.
Right.
And Leto's like, all right, I'll sing it again. But then he's also like, do you understand what that song's about? And she's like, I don't. And he says, oh, it's about not having freedom from the past, which seems really appropriate for this test. But then
Totally.
also, the next thing they talk about is this vulture flying above them, high above them. They can tell by the feathers that it's a vulture. And she asks, what does that eat? And he says, quote, anything that's dead or nearly so, end quote.
Oh.
And I couldn't help but think about Liet Kynes, his final moments as he
Right.
was crawling on that pending spice blow,
Yes.
and he's surrounded by these hawks, these like desert hawks, or a desert hawk is like hanging out with him,
Right.
waiting for him to be dead so it can start eating.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, this kind of like tie to the final moments of Liet Kynes. And hey, this whole time, this whole test is to connect Siona to her ancient memories, her
Right.
like ancestral memories, which includes Liet
Uh-huh.
Kynes through Chani,
Right.
right?
Her great, great, great,
Great, great,
great,
great, great,
great,
great, great, great,
great.
great, great grandmother of a storm. I mean, grandfather, Liet Kynes, or
Yeah.
grandmother, if you're watching the Villeneuve adaptation. Point is, I was like, oh, that's fun. So from Liet's March to this carrion eating bird and this connection to the past, and even the
Yeah.
meaning of Liet's March
Yeah.
being freedom from the past and not having it. And it just all felt very deliberate, which was a lot of fun.
I think that's great insight. I'm impressed you picked up on that because this went well over my head. But I think you're correct. There is some very intentional Liet Kynes symbolism and callbacks to that chapter where Liet dies in the first book.
Listen, this is the benefit of a tinfoil hat. It
Mm.
extends above the top of your head. So things that normally would go over your head get caught
Get
up.
caught. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to shape it appropriately. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, nevertheless, in the rest of this chapter, we do learn some fun Fremen history from their conversations as Siona fluctuates between basically being confrontational, rebellious, impetuous,
Yep.
and genuinely curious.
Right.
Like, oh, wait, that sounds fucking interesting. Can you
Yeah.
say more about that?
Yep.
For instance, Leto tells Siona about how Fremen greeted each other in the open desert. Quote, it was the Fremen custom to treat distant people as hostile until they threw sand into the air. End quote.
Wow.
Which is so cool. I
Yeah.
really liked this. And he says, we made a joke about it in the beginning of the episode, but the idea that the hand that holds sand, it doesn't have a weapon in it, right? Or
Right.
said better than that. But that idea is really beautiful.
Yeah. And this is the kind of tiny little detail that would be so cool to see in the movie, right?
Yes. Oh my
Imagine
gosh.
imagine a scene in the movie where two Fremen caravans see each other from across the dunes and just a quick shot of one of them throwing sand in the air. We never
Yeah.
really explain it. We move on quickly, but that tiny little detail
Yeah.
would be very impressive to see in the film.
So Villeneuve, I know y'all wrapped filming
Get on it.
like a year ago. Not too late to do some pickup shots. So
Yeah,
do us a
do it.
favor, throw that in there if you didn't already. Or maybe
Would
in
love it.
Messiah. We'll get it
Yeah.
in the next adaptation.
We got time.
She also asks, Siona asks about a signal device. She's like, why didn't we bring a signal device? And Leto touches on this Fremen pragmatism. Quote, in the old days, everything you took into the desert was a necessity, and that was all you took. Your life is no longer free of possessions, Siona, or you would not have asked about a signal device. End quote.
Everything's a lesson.
Everything's a lesson. And it reminds me again of Amtal. Like they rely so heavily on the stuff that they bring with them. If you bring something you don't need with you, you look back and you see the Fremen with the Rubik's Cube. You're like, come on, dude. You're going to get
Amateur.
the whole troop killed
Yep.
with your block of fun plastic. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Or spice plastic or whatever. Dune material.
Yeah, you can imagine very few or no sentimental possessions ever made it into a Fremen's pack. out in the desert at least.
Yes,
In
exactly.
the
I was gonna
siege,
say,
sure,
like,
have
in the
photos of
siege,
your wife and
yeah,
kids,
yeah, yeah.
whatever.
Tarps,
But in the
blankets.
desert, in
Yeah,
your backpack, every ounce matters. And
right.
there's no point in wasting it on something that's purely sentimental.
Also, it's like, what a good way to lose it,
Right.
you know?
Oh, honey, I lost our photo from our wedding.
I had to run from a sand it's like, "Yeah, why'd you take it into the desert? Come
Right.
on." I have friends who are like they work in farming, basically, and it's like, they don't wear their wedding rings out to the
Uh-huh.
field because it's like, fucking why?
Yeah.
What a good way to throw away your wedding ring.
Wow. Or they're trying to get hit
Yeah.
on out in the field.
Yeah, they're cheating on their wife with unpicked vegetables. This chapter ends, after some more walking and talking, at a rocky flatland, which is so interesting because this is not something that I picture in a desert, but naturally, deserts are more about precipitation levels and not about these rolling sand
Hmm.
dunes, right? It's also really cold, apparently, and we don't really get other than what Siona says, like, oh, so you don't feel cold, and she kind of hugs to him for warmth. I saw somewhere that it gets below freezing, pretty dramatically below freezing,
Mm.
toward 0 degrees Fahrenheit and something like -10, -15 degrees Celsius in the desert at night.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, even in a still suit, moving and your body's moving and everything, Siona probably was feeling actually quite cold.
Right. It's an environment of extremes.
It is. Now he prepares for her a weird little like skin hammock in the segments of
Ew.
his wormy thing. Apparently, it's a heated hammock, so out in the cold of the desert, I'm sure it's quite nice.
Right.
And she quickly falls asleep. She's like arm over her face, immediately sleep.
Hmm.
Pretty sweet. And during this time, Leto begins scanning his other memories and kind of reliving humanity's mistakes to
Mm.
remind himself of what would happen if the golden path were to fail.
Right. Reliving those mistakes to build up his own resolve and remind himself why he's doing this.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into chapter 40. Our second
Yep.
chapter today, folks, is a surprise intervention.
Yeah.
So, Leo, if you want to grab a glass of water, maybe get comfortable.
Yeah.
Um, couple of
Uh-huh.
couple of things I wanted to go over.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. Is it my humor? Is it I'm making too many jokes?
It's your
Shit.
humor. You're being a little
Oh,
too funny. I need you to
too
back it
silly.
off. Okay? You're giving me three
Damn it.
star vibes, and we need 5 stars.
Listen, okay. All serious from here on out.
Got it. Good.
Analysis time.
Good. Five
Yeah.
stars. 5 stars only.
Good. Thank you.
So, as is becoming tradition, chapter 40 opens up with a very angry Duncan, Idaho. And Duncan is this time in his room. He's moping on his couch after the showdown with Moneo this morning.
Right.
And as he's moping and angry and fuming, a fish speaker arrives to tell Duncan that, hey, Moneo has summoned you to his office. He wants to talk. What should I tell him? And he's kind of resistant at first. He gives the fish speaker a hard time, even toys with her emotions a little bit
Yeah,
by
yeah, yeah.
offering to sleep with her. But ultimately, after he learns that Hui has also been summoned to the same office for the same meeting, he's like, all right, fucking, I'll go. So he heads over to Moneo's office. Now, when he gets there, Moneo and Hui are already there waiting for him. And the intervention actually kind of begins on a nice, soft note. The Major Domo doesn't exactly apologize, but he does ask for Duncan's forgiveness and or understanding. He says, I should not have made you feel inadequate and small
Right.
in the way I did this morning. I shouldn't have fucking decked your ass.
Yeah.
Duncan does sort of accept this apology. He at least is graceful about it. And the conversation then turns toward Siona and Leto's test, which is
Right.
still undergoing at this time. And Moneo is a little bit hesitant to talk about his own test. But he does eventually reveal that, quote, he showed me a small glimpse of what it's like to be the God Emperor, end quote. That was an important part of Moneo's test all the way back when he underwent a similar trial as Siona is undergoing now.
He also says a little later, he's like, and it nearly killed me.
Yes.
Like, seeing that glimpse nearly killed me, which
Right.
floored me. I mean, again, we see Moneo kind of relive some of his trauma in this chapter for the sake of being, candid with Duncan and with
Yeah.
Hui. And we see that Hui also kind of gets it, like she's kind of there already.
Right.
But man, a small glimpse nearly killed Monet.
Right. I saw only what I was able to see, which was a
Yeah.
small glimpse. That's all he could handle.
Right.
And he does admit that during his own test with the God Emperor, he too was rebellious and angry and passionate and impetuous, just as Duncan is now and Siona is in the desert right now with Leto. But after his test, after he saw just that tiniest of glimpses, it changed him forever. His eyes were opened to a higher truth, and he said that he himself found a greater purpose. And even later in the chapter, he gets emotional recalling the sacrifices Leto has made, because he glimpsed some of these in his own test. Quote, "It was then," Moneo swallowed, "that he made me look into the horror that he had seen." Tears welled from Moneo's eyes and ran down his cheeks. And I was only glad that I did not have to make his decision, that I could content myself with being a follower. End quote.
So I'm not going to make any jokes because, humor is going to cost us ratings. But were I to make a joke about this, I would say that maybe made me look into the horror is just Leto saying, Moneo, I don't have genitals. And Moneo's like, oh, God, I can't have, oh, fuck, no,
What?
oh, man. Oh, nearly killed me.
Yeah.
Nearly killed me to consider.
Right. Could be. It could be. I mean, there's a number of horrors, right, in Leto's experience. And not having genitals is high on the list.
Really, really high on the list. But again, I'm not going to make that joke.
Right. We wouldn't want to.
No.
So after revealing all of this to Hui and Duncan, Moneo's like, okay, anyway, we're not here to talk about my past and my rebelliousness and my test. The point of this intervention, guys, come on, let's get on topic. We need to discuss Duncan and Hui's future.
Yeah.
And Moneo is very clear. The two need to separate and never see each other again. And also, Hui, goddammit, stop calling Duncan your lover.
And stop holding hands.
Stop holding hands. God damn it. Like, this intervention is not going well.
No. You're going to break up and never see each other again. They're making out. Moneo's like, come on.
Oh my God.
Hey,
come
focus.
On, break up already.
Jesus.
Yeah. So that is the point of this intervention. And what's notable is throughout the conversation, Hui is holding Duncan's hand for most of this chapter. But as the conversation continues and as we near the end of the chapter, it's clear that she is perhaps doing this more to soften the blow for him than to resist Moneo with him. You know, it's less like, I am here with you, let's tell Moneo to fuck off. And it's more, this is bad news, so I'm going to hold your hand.
Right. There's maybe a dissonance there between she's saying, yes, I understand, I get it, I'm on board. But then she is like squeezing his hand back when he squeezes her hand. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's, she's kind of like trying to make sure that he's okay and giving him some of that comfort in that moment, but still kind of, she's on board.
Yeah.
With,
and eventually they do stop holding each other's hands. And when she reaches back, Duncan's like, no, stop, Duncan, no. Now, Duncan, very on brand, gets very angry and petulant when Moneo says they need to separate. He starts throwing shade at the big, ugly worm emperor. I don't like him. He's ugly and long. He's ugly and long. And Moneo, how could you do this to your daughter? You're a bad father. You know, he just starts just railing and ranting because he's defensive, right? At this point, he's realized, oh, I'm being ganged up on here by not just Moneo, but also Hui. She is not here on my side. I'm the target of this intervention. So he's very defensive and starts raving and ranting, and Moneo's just like, let him get it out of his system, let him do this, whatever.
Right.
And part of his raving and ranting actually involves comparing Leto, the God Emperor, to Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. Remember him?
Yeah.
And Moneo's response to this is actually very interesting because it gives us some insight into the character of Baron Vladimir Harkonnen.
Yeah.
Quote, He was a seeker after sensations, Moneo said. The fat was a side effect, then perhaps something to experience for itself because it offended people, and he enjoyed offending. End quote.
I'm so mad because I wrote into the script, Brian and Kevin never read this far into the books,
Clearly.
obviously. Yeah, very
Clearly.
obviously. Because, in the prequels, they're like, he's fat because Mohiam gave him a disease
Right,
that
like,
made him fat. And he used to be
injected him
like
with
a
something.
gym bro, but then she made him fat and it's a punishment. And it's like clear that they just didn't understand this that Monet was talking about.
Right.
So I wrote, Brian and Kevin never read this far into the books, lightly bashing Brian and Kevin during this book club,
Yeah.
right? Good so far, except then I glance over at the podcast bingo card that one of our Patreon subscribers, Avian, made, and it says some light Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson
God damn
bashing.
it.
And I'm like, God damn it.
Put a chip down. Put a chip down. God damn it.
Okay. A4, you get that one. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Indeed. There you go. You got another one.
That is so silly. That is so silly, Abu.
There's a third one. Hope you win your goddamn bingo game. Now, to Maneo's point, though, I do want to call out that Duncan is incredibly wrong here in comparing Leto to the Baron. By this definition of the Baron that Moneo has just given us, Leto is perhaps literally the opposite. Because whereas the Baron is a seeker of sensations, right? He wants to eat the food and have the sex and do the things that bring him instant gratification and pleasure and that perhaps even offend other people. Leto is out here literally giving up genitals and sex for his entire existence. Literally out here breaking his heart over and over again by losing the people he loves in order to save them all. He is sacrificing over and over and over again in a way that the Baron probably never once did in his life.
He gave up eating. Literally gave up eating and talked about the black pit agony in his stomach for thousands of years. So we talk about Baron seeking out sensations, eating that third Krispy Kreme donut.
I get
delicious.
it. Me too.
Worth it. Same. That's why I weigh what I weigh. But Leto, no, not him.
Yeah.
So
it just shows Duncan's ignorance in the moment and how little he truly understands, right? To make this comparison to someone who is, frankly, the polar opposite of Leto Atreides. Now, chapter 40 wraps up as Duncan storms from the room. He's had enough of this fucking intervention. And Moneo turns to Hui and clearly concludes a conversation that he and Hui were having moments before Duncan arrived. Because he turns to her and says, quote, "You see," Moneo asked, "you were wrong. Neither you nor the fish speakers have gentled him. But you, Hui, you have only contributed to his destruction." End quote.
Yeah. I thought this was really interesting because initially, when I first read this, I read it on a very surface level. I'm like, Duncan's petulant. He literally storms from the room. He like goes back to his bedroom. And it reads on so many levels as just the guy who's like upset and going through a breakup. And he's just such a kid. Like he's such a child.
Yeah.
But then there's this moment where he's in his room and it says, quote, "He knew, though, that he had done the thing which would begin freeing Hui from her love for him." End quote. So I think as I started preparing to record this episode, I was looking at this chapter a little bit more deeply. Again, maybe sliding my tinfoil hat a little bit more on again. Click, the chin strap goes on, the mouth flap goes in, the over my head catchers go up. But I think perhaps, because we get a couple of lines throughout, and I know we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we get a couple of lines that suggest that Duncan's awareness and his sort of perception of things is shifting, right? Like his perception of Moneo, and he's realizing, oh, we're the only three humans left in the world in a big way. And I almost think it's clear that he understands he was being tested and that he quote unquote failed, right? But I also think it sounds like he made the decision to like play the villain once more, to make outlandish, petulant claims, to storm out of the room, to be this like emotional thing, because that will free Hui from loving him. and allows her to then be less hurt by whatever the future holds, because it's clear from that meeting. And I don't mean to say that he planned this from the beginning. I
Mm-hmm.
think he went into the meeting like, I don't know what's happening. Hui is here. And even from the very beginning, once he sees her face, he can't look anywhere else. Like, he's still head over heels for this girl. But I think during that meeting, as you pointed out, he realizes, oh, she's 100% on board. She's
Mm-hmm.
gone.
Mm-hmm.
She's with Leto. There's no chance of us anymore. So I love her. How do I reduce the pain to her in the coming days, months, years? I don't give her hope for me coming around. That makes it easier for her to say,
Mm.
this hurts me, but I'm fully for Leto now. And Duncan's gone because he's so petulant. Look at him. He stormed out of the room. He's being unreasonable. He compared him to Baron Harkonnen, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Interesting. I didn't quite read it that deeply, but we will be revisiting Duncan and his sort of transformation in this chapter
Yeah.
into the rebel.
Right.
So perhaps there's more to dig into with this conversation, because
Yeah,
this
totally.
is an interesting take. And now it's kind of got my brain churning a little bit. But yeah, at least on my read throughs, I didn't quite read into it that much. But perhaps there's more here.
Yeah, we can talk about it more. And actually, speaking of, we have some takeaways for you, but we're going to take a quick break.
Mm-hmm.
So don't go anywhere. When we're back, we're going to spit some hot Leto trivia,
Oh.
as well as talk about Duncan the Rebel. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Welcome back, folks. Let's get into our takeaways today and dig a little deeper into the ideas from today's chapters, starting with some Leto trivia.
Hey, cool.
Because across these two chapters, we do learn some fun little tidbits about Leto's experience. And as always, I find it very fascinating to examine Leto's life as a worm man god, because it is truly so far removed from the average human experience.
Right.
And so any little detail I'm like gobbling up because I just want to know what it's like to be Leto, the God Emperor. And we get some fun little facts all throughout today's reading.
Yeah. Including, speaking of gobbling up,
Uh-huh.
Leto eats sand. Because, like, yeah, they're walking, and Siona's like, yo, you eat sand? And Leto's like, mouthful of sand. What? Yeah. Why? Is that not normal? Embarrassed.
Yep.
I also could not help but think back on, like, going to the beach, having a picnic, and sand getting in, like, whatever the sandwich you made, and then taking a bite, and that feeling of sand in my teeth. It was such a visceral callback. I was like, ew, that's what it's like to be the God Emperor? No, probably not.
Yeah.
But yeah, we learned that he eats sand, and then we don't get anything else. They just
a
move
throwaway
on.
line.
How dare she?
Incredible.
Just ask 2 more follow-up questions, Siona, please. But if you're like us, this led you to a rabbit hole. This is hilarious because, Abu, you wrote, this led you down a rabbit hole, right?
Right.
Of like Google searching eating sand.
Right. Can I eat sand? Should I eat sand? Sand healthy? Sand nutrients? Question mark.
Google's like, I'm pretty sure this guy's about to eat sand. I'm 90% sure you're hungry at the beach. And it's funny because I've been down this same rabbit hole.
Oh.
Because I've heard about, you can buy from people online like plastic baggies full of edible dirt and like soil. Because, okay, here's the thing. Yes, it is safe to eat in very small quantities. Sand or dirt or clay or chalk is another thing that sometimes is ingested.
Yeah.
But it is really, really risky, and it's not good for you, and it can be really, really bad for you in a lot of ways. One way is bacteria, because there's a lot of bacteria in soil and dirt and sand.
Yeah.
So don't.
It turns out dirt, sand, all of these little particulates trap diseases.
Yeah. It's almost like the word dirty came from something. I don't know what it was, but something related to this.
And look, if you really are just craving eating trash, I can promise you there's a Taco Bell in your city. Like, you can just...
Wow.
Go get a quesarito. I actually love Taco Bell. I was going to say all the time. I had a Taco Bell last night.
Also, I've heard, and this is maybe neither here nor there, but I've heard that if you're getting a burrito with like beans, rice, and onions, there's only so many ways you can fuck up those ingredients. So like broadly, Taco Bell tends to be healthier than say McDonald's
Because the like 6 ingredients they use are all super simple.
because it's rice and beans. It's like
Right.
rice, beans, and tomato-based salsa. It's like
Yeah,
you
true.
can't really fuck that up too much
Okay.
compared
Okay.
to the bread in McDonald's is not even bread by international standards.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, you've made your point. I rescind my statement against Taco Bell. Damn.
Yeah, Del Taco. If you want to eat trash, eat Del. Just kidding. Such a California dig.
Yeah, so there you go. There's a far too long tangent on sand, and more than you ever wanted to know about it, and more than Leto ever told us about it, which is disappointing.
Yeah.
But we do learn some other things about our dear God Emperor. Another thing we learn on this walk and talk through the desert between Leto and Siona is that Leto has an internal furnace.
Yep.
Quote, the thing he thought of as his oxygen supercharger vented steadily, making him intensely aware of the protein factories and amino acid resources his worm self had acquired. End quote.
Sounds like some Benny Gesserit training to me.
Yeah, for real. Very hard to imagine this, actually, what the inside of a worm looks like.
Oh,
But
my amino acid resources are kind of tingling.
yeah,
Ugh,
ooh,
weird.
damn, a little upset tummy.
My protein factories are a little upset.
Give me a Tums. So this chemical factory not only creates oxygen, actually, it's a way for the worms to excrete oxygen back out into the atmosphere of Arrakis. It also processes nutrients, as Leto said in that quote. It also has the added benefit of keeping him warm, which is
Yep.
why Siona is so cozy in his weird neck flap thing.
Yeah. This also answers, by the way, how a desert planet has a breathable atmosphere.
Right?
Is
The
we have
oxygen comes
the
from the
biggest
worms.
animals on the planet create oxygen.
Right. Just like farting oxygen all the time.
Especially if you shoot them with laser guns. Just
Very true. Now, this idea of an internal furnace inside the worms is very in line, actually, with what the Dune Encyclopedia tells us about worm physiology. The Dune Encyclopedia says, quote, the adult sandworm was a true autotroph, producing all of its nutritional needs from inorganic compounds on the planet's surface. Excess gases not utilized for nutrients were literally ignited by the heat of sand travel. Thus, the worm always had a flame deep within the body cavity. End quote.
yeah, that's cool. What great imagery. That's so
Yeah.
neat.
So it's very interesting to see that Leto has this internal furnace, and also quite alarming because where's his stomach? You know?
Yeah.
This transformation clearly is headed in one direction.
Speaking of which, we also get some details about Leto from Moneo's intervention for Duncan.
Right.
The Major Domo mentions at one point that Leto doesn't and or can't shed tears.
Oh.
So Duncan's like, sandworm, he whispers. Sandworm. And Moneo's like, whoa. He's not yet fully a sandworm. And so then the goal is like, whoa, wait, is it maybe more cultural? Quote, did Leto have the Fremen prohibition against tears then? How odd the Fremen had always been about such a waste of moisture, giving water to the dead. End quote.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what do you think, Abu? So we have that two possibilities. He's
Right.
either sandworm, moisture sensitive, or the Fremen prohibition against crying.
Yeah. I mean, I think Duncan is correct on both accounts here. I think it's a little of column A, a little of column B.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do think it's that. I think you're right. So here's the thing. Moneo knows Leto is in fact sensitive to moisture. So I also saw this as Moneo continuing to protect Leto's secrets
Very true.
with a misdirection. Because like naturally Duncan's like, oh yeah, maybe Leto is weak to water. And Moneo's like, whoa. He's not really a sandworm.
Yeah,
And
come
Duncan's
on, we
like,
can't really.
oh, maybe he just doesn't like to cry. Maybe he's just like strong and serious. And Moneo's just quietly like, Okay. Close one. Man,
Yeah,
glad I said that.
that is a great point. I think you're spot on with that.
It also does draw a pretty stark comparison to Moneo, who like openly wept during this chapter. Like, right, tears rolling down his face.
Yeah,
And then we get a reminder that for the Fremen, this is like a very poignant thing.
totally. It adds weight to that emotional moment as well.
Totally. Yeah.
Now, finally, to wrap up our first takeaway, we have one more little detail we learn about Leto in today's reading. Hui reveals that Malky used to talk about Leto's disgust of prayers.
Mm.
Quote, he said the Lord Leto looked on prayer as attempted coercion, a form of violence against the chosen God, telling the immortal what to do. Give me a miracle, God, or I won't believe in you. End quote.
Fucking cool.
So cool. And I kind of laughed out loud at this because
Yeah.
what other being in human history could have this opinion?
Only Leto.
Because which one of us is from the perspective of God looking at prayer? Most of us, I would say 99% of us, if we pray, are praying from the perspective of the human talking to God and not the other way around.
Right. Yeah.
And so I found it really fascinating to think of it in the other direction. What would prayers be like from God's perspective? And honestly, I think Leto's nailing it. It's not hard to imagine that most gods would be like, God damn, these prayers are so annoying. I mean, sorry, me, damn it. Those prayers are so annoying and manipulative.
Dear God, let my sport team win this match
Right.
against the other sport team.
Right. Oh my God. It also very much reminded me of one of my favorite books, American Gods by Neil Gaiman, an iconic book. But the premise of the book is that the God characters in the story can only be as strong as the number of prayers and believers that they can sustain. And Leto's opinion here on prayers immediately made me think of American Gods and how religion is set up in that story.
I love that idea of prayer as an act of violence toward your chosen God is so fascinating to me. And again, as someone who was raised outside of a theistic religion, I've kind of seen it that way. And again, I'm not privy to people's private prayers between them and their gods, but like naturally there is kind of a meme in society about people being like, please God, let the Denver Broncos lose this fucking match. And it's like,
Broncos
or whatever. And it's like, what? Do you think Jesus is up there like rooting for your sports team?
Absolutely.
What is happening? He's clearly a Dolphins fan. Also, there's a really great Alan Watts.
Our boy Alan.
Alan Watts, yeah. He talked about how the adherence to a visual representation of a deity is a sign of a lack of faith. Like that you need a visual representation to kind of solidify your belief.
Yeah.
I don't remember it well enough to quote it here, but again, all interesting thoughts. It's fun. It's fun when this book gets a little deep.
Yeah, for sure. So that's our first takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of fun facts about Leto that inevitably led us down some rabbit holes of research and other
Always.
books and larger than life ideas about religion.
Now, our second takeaway today is the birth of a rebel.
Yeah.
Hey, happy birthday, Rebel Duncan.
How many times is this goddamn guy going to be born?
He's born again. Yes, in the reading today, in chapter 40, we start to see a powerful transformation take place for Duncan, for Gola Duncan. And he basically sheds his Atreides loyalty in kind of a crazy way, in a way that really feels like, is this even Duncan, Idaho anymore? Like something that's so core to who Duncan is now shifting.
Yeah.
And we decided this would be worth exploring in a second takeaway, because again, this is something that's been a part of who Duncan is time immemorial.
Right.
The fact that this is changing is pretty profound. But at the same time, it is worth noting that it does seem like most of the Golas end up being in a similar position where they find themselves rebelling against Leto. I do wonder if that's the case, though. Like, I wonder if they find a similar path toward rebellion.
I don't think it's a similar path. I think it is a similar end point where they ultimately become disenchanted with Leto.
Yeah.
Because we covered in our Duncan episode how many of them like
Oh, for sure.
rebel against Duncan and literally try to lead coups against Leto. They get disenchanted with him, or they ultimately, like the Duncan at the start of this book, are like, "You're gonna fucking replace me, bro? What the fuck?" And then they try to kill him. You know, like there's
Yeah,
something that motivates them to turn against Leto. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing that our Duncan does.
that's true. The end result is the same. I mean, times are changing and
Yeah,
things are different now.
yeah,
I wonder if in the past it was they didn't believe that all of the Atreides are actually in Leto and he's this monstrosity, or they didn't believe he was truly an Atreides, or they believed he was once an Atreides, but like Alia has been lost to some internal possession, or
right,
whatever. Rationalizing it in a way that allows them to maintain their loyalty to House Atreides, which is that core Duncan quality, while still rebelling against the tyrant because so
right.
much of what he's doing is quote unquote not House Atreides.
I mean, Duncan does that himself in this chapter because he compares him
Exactly.
to Harkonnen.
Yeah, but again, I wonder, was he playing the villain in that? And we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. But the point is, it's interesting to see the different varieties of rebellion that are taking place, and it's
Yeah,
possible that this Duncan's rebellion goes a lot deeper, where not only has he already attacked an Atreides, Moneo,
yeah,
he's saying all these things. And actually, let's just start by looking at the final words of today's reading.
yeah.
This is just moments after running in with Nayla. Idaho is standing, right, fuming in his room
Mm-hmm.
after the hardest walk of his life, the hardest moments in his life.
Right.
Quote, Idaho sensed the shape of things which had formed the pliant major domo. Duty and responsibility. What a safe haven those were in a time of difficult decisions. I was like that once, Idaho thought, but that was in another life, another time. End quote.
Ooh.
I mean, to some degree, he's right. Like, Moneo himself admits, having seen a glimpse of the golden path, he's happy to be a servant. He's happy to be just aiding however he can. He has
Yeah.
duty and responsibility. He has the courage to be dutiful in the face of the horrors of the golden path. But it does seem like maybe Duncan's kind of missing that element because he's saying, what a safe haven. Even though for Moneo, it's like, I'm not afraid of anything. It's like Duncan's missed Moneo's point.
Well, Duncan knows nothing about the Golden Path, so yeah,
True.
like all of that is just going above his head, and his
Right.
tinfoil hat is not tall enough to catch it.
Yeah.
So yeah, all Duncan is seeing is, like he says here, just being the pliant major domo. He's too married to his duty and his responsibility that he can't see how corrupt or whatever Leto has become,
Right.
like
Right. Right.
I
Right.
am seeing now. You know, like his slow transformation into the rebel completely misses the reason that Moneo transformed the other way from rebel
Right.
to servant,
Yes.
and that core reason is the golden path. Moneo understands a little sliver of it, and that was enough to turn him. Idaho understands none of it, and he's turning the
True.
other way
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
We're almost seeing like these two ships crossing opposite directions in the night in
Yeah.
this chapter.
Yeah.
You're correct, though. It is that understanding because Duncan doesn't understand the higher truth, the greater purpose of the Golden Path, whereas Hui and Moneo can at least wrap their minds around some parts of it and can thus justify what they're doing.
It's very much becoming that like those who are sensitive to the golden path are on one team and everyone
Yeah,
who isn't is being ruled by a cruel tyrant.
right.
And
Broncos and
Duncan
Dolphins.
Broncos and Dolphins, you know? Jesus loves the Dolphins and every other deity is team Broncos or something. Vishnu is like very about the Broncos.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But it's interesting. The divisions are not as clear as House Atreides, not House Atreides any longer, right? Like the universal teams that have
Yeah,
been drawn up, the lines in the sand, have now divided people into do you understand the golden path and are you in step with it, or are you missing the whole point? And
yeah.
in a way, we see now Duncan kind of sliding into Team Siona in a way,
Yes,
right?
totally. And imagine how disorienting that must be for a Duncan who is used to cheering for the Broncos to be reborn in a world where the Broncos don't exist.
or they're fucking trash. And you're like, oh my God, am I a Dolphins fan now?
Right. Or they keep just saying like we have to sacrifice for the greater purpose of humanity.
Yeah.
Throw the touchdown. It's just like
Just giving up touchdowns left and
just
right. Yeah.
constantly.
Their defense, not even stopping the wide receivers when they
Right.
do the
They
double.
just keep saying we have to let them get the touchdown or else the path will be, thrown off.
Yeah.
Very confusing times for Duncan. And I think we see how him being very unmoored from the reality he knows
Yes.
pushes
Yeah.
him in this direction to rebel. And obviously, a number of things have pushed Duncan to this point, right? We have watched this like pressure cooker of this
Yeah.
Gola
True.
heat up for many chapters now. For perhaps this entire book, we've seen him slowly get more and more agitated and rebellious. And here, chapter 40, and especially those final lines of chapter 40 that we just read, feel like the breaking point or the turning point.
Right.
And I think one of the key reasons this becomes the turning point is because in this chapter, he is at a particularly low point in his short existence so far. I mean, the chapter begins with this quote, with every thought, Idaho felt himself diminished. He sensed the will to live as it faded, leaving ashes where his anger had burned itself out. End quote.
Yeah.
Even his defiance, even his anger is like not enough to sustain him at the beginning of this chapter.
Bro's listening to Evanescence.
Evanescence. He's like, maybe my whole wardrobe should be black now instead of Atreides green.
Duncan comes in with black fingernails. It's not
Right.
a phase, Moneo.
The most aggressive eyeliner you've ever seen.
And again, no shame to anybody who does. Looks great.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe. It's not Duncan's vibe.
It's not Duncan's vibe, to be sure. But it's clear that he's in a very vulnerable position in this chapter, very raw, emotionally speaking. And to then walk into an intervention where he's ganged up not only by the guy who embarrassed his ass just a few hours ago, but also by the girl he just slept with who's turning on him. That feels to me like the final straw for this Duncan. It's what broke the camel's back here. And as we talked about in our summary earlier, what perhaps makes this moment even worse for him is at the beginning of the intervention, he sits down, Hui takes his hand, and he's like, okay, she's with me, she's on my side. And he slowly comes to the realization that a rift has formed between them.
Yeah.
She has accepted her duty as the God Emperor's betrothed. She has accepted what is necessary for the Golden Path, and he is either incapable of doing so or refuses to do so.
Right.
And that's a gap that can't be crossed at this point. And so this betrayal, this moment of intervention, plus the raw emotions he's feeling, I think it all sort of culminates.
Yeah, I mean, again, we go back to him and her laying in postcoital on the bed and him going, I don't understand how you could. And she's like, he has responsibilities and needs so much greater than ours.
Right.
Like, it's clear Hui knows her place in Leto's universe within his larger plans.
Yeah.
And Duncan has no fucking clue. Duncan, again, to the ongoing thesis of this takeaway, Duncan has no sensitivity to the Golden Path at all.
Right.
And while Hui is making a very painful sacrifice to say, I'm going to be the bride to a god, I didn't know it would be this hard. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I didn't know it was going to be this hard.
Yeah.
She's still able to do that because she knows enough to understand why she has to. So it's very easy to feel sympathy for Duncan in this position. As much as we get a lot of Leto's internal thoughts and we get a lot of we understand the Golden Path so much better than Duncan does. And so from our perspective, Duncan can seem petulant and annoying. If you block out the Golden Path as an entire justification for things, yeah, it really makes sense why he's turning against Leto, why so many Golas in the past have done the same, why they've decided to try to kill this god emperor rather than bend a knee the way Duncans are so used to doing for House Atreides.
Right. I mean, imagine reading this book with any chapter where Moneo and Leto are talking, where Leto is thinking, where Leto and the Bene Gesserit are talking. Imagine cutting out all of those chapters and only reading the parts where Duncan comes in, meets Leto, Duncan comes in, gets a TED Talk, Duncan comes in, gets another fucking TED Talk. Imagine only reading the Duncan chapters of this book. and not understanding anything about the Golden Path.
Yeah.
We would be just as angry as Duncan.
Even Leto's base humanity is questionable because, again,
Yes.
he is a 7-meter monstrosity. Pink flesh, gray skin, silvery
Yeah.
weird hands,
Furnace.
flippers that apparently he uses to drive his weird little cart,
Right.
internal furnace, and then he speaks in Paul's voice, and that's supposed to convince you that he's still human. Yeah, this is a horror story.
Totally.
One in which the monster, that big literal monster, is like, trust me, Duncan, look at my flippers, shoot me with a laser gun. And he's like, what the fuck is happening?
Totally.
You're right.
Totally.
If we like excerpted, we just did those like 5 chapters back to back.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, this is a Brothers Grimm story meets like Geiger meets all of the most horrible horror you can imagine.
Totally. That would be an interesting thought exercise.
Yeah.
To create the Duncan cut of this book.
Yeah.
Now, returning to our takeaway here, there is one poignant moment in the intervention that I want to call out because an angry Duncan bitterly spits out what his role is, or what he thinks his role is. Quote, Hui tried to take Idaho's hand, but he pulled away. I know my place, Idaho said. I'm a useful follower. I can carry the Atreides banner. The green and black is on my back. End quote.
It's the Broncos pitch. The green and back is, I don't know their colors.
I think it's orange and blue is Broncos.
Wow.
I do know a little bit about football. Yeah, he's got like a Broncos tattoo, and he's fucking regretting it. Now, of course, by the end of the chapter, we know that Duncan has either fully rejected or is at least starting to reject this role that he's defined, right? I'm a useful follower. I carry the Atreides banner. The green and black is on my back. Like, he is saying that out of bitterness and anger. And at the end, he is walking away from that, which is profound for a Duncan to do.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned earlier, almost the opposite path that Moneo took. Moneo, born and bred Atreides, rebelled for many years and then saw the Golden Path, became that useful follower, the loyal servant.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting that at the end of the chapter, Duncan recognizes that his actions have fully cut him off from Hui, which, as we've been talking, Duncan really is unmoored all throughout his existence here. And cutting himself off from Hui severs potentially the last tie that he might have to Leto or the Citadel or this empire or anything Team Leto, right? It's his last potential tie to the Broncos. And maybe now he's fully free to go Dolphins.
Yeah.
And of course, as you explained earlier, maybe there is a larger motive here where he is either intentionally or unintentionally doing this on purpose to make that severing easier on both of them. If I act out, if I am impetuous, if I am undateable, basically, then this breakup won't hurt as much. So maybe he's doing that intentionally at the end there. I personally don't quite read it that way. I don't think it's Duncan's MO to be playing a 4D game of chess to that level. But instinctively, I think something could be happening along those lines where it's more just an emotional response where breakups hurt. So let me just fucking act out. I think we're all guilty of doing that at some point in our love lives.
Yeah. I don't know that it necessarily has to be as subtle or nuanced as like a fully formed 4D chess thing, but I do get the sense that things are a changing, as we've kind of seen on every level. Fish speakers threatening Moneo's safety. Even Siona being the most rebellious rebel Leto has ever seen, right? He's like, yo, she's crazy rebellious. This is insane.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's interesting to read this chapter, especially that last portion, with the thought that Duncan intentionally began at some point during that interview playing the villain in order to make it easier for Hui, who he loves and doesn't want her to suffer, but then also as a form of what he sees as bravery, which is facing this scary prospect of freedom full on, opposed to the cowardice of quote unquote poor Moneo that he thought earlier, right? He's saying Moneo is duty and service, as like a safe haven. Poor Moneo, he says. And then that's also why he would get riled up being called cowardly, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's doing what he thinks is brave, is facing dropping Atreides' loyalty face on and going, I'm going to drive headfirst into this, which also makes that earlier quote that you brought up. I'm a useful follower. I can carry the Atreides banner. The green and black is on my back. That becomes this sort of wry, sarcastic, this is the point at which he's decided, fuck it. Okay, I'm the villain. Now I'm going to be as petulant as they think that I'm going to be. And then I'm going to get the fuck out of here. And here we are. Now I'm on my own. I'm unmoored. I'm unbound to the court. I don't have loyalty for Leto, but maybe in a deeper and more profound way than any Duncan has ever been before.
Certainly. Some of that nuance is certainly present all throughout there. And I think we just landed at slightly different interpretations of how deep it actually goes. Because to me, it feels relatively surface level emotional response. And perhaps you've landed on like, there's more going on here under the surface.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. But listener land, email us. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. Now, to round out our second takeaway and our takeaway section as a whole today, I did want to read one final quote because we've mentioned a number of times how Duncan is now completely free from the Broncos. But this is not the most comforting of thoughts, right? He isn't like, yay, I'm free. I can do anything now.
Choose any team.
Any team.
I looked it up. Jacksonville Jaguars are teal and black and gold. So
there we go.
That would be. Anyway.
Quote, I have no more ties to any time, he thought. And how odd that this was not a liberating thought. End quote.
Right.
Which makes sense, right? Like, this is the first time in Duncan Idaho's entire existence that he is completely and terrifyingly free to choose his own destiny. He has spent a life serving the Atreides. He has given not just his life, but many lives to the Atreides. And here is Duncan standing on the precipice going, oh God, what now?
Oh boy.
And we'll just have to keep reading to figure out what now is for Duncan, which team he picks next.
Yeah. There's also that moment after thinking about Nayla for a moment. He gets back to his room and it says his own concerns returned more strongly than before. He is all about his own business now.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see what that leads to.
Totally. So those are our takeaways for today. A bit of Leto trivia and a deeper analysis of Duncan's transformation. Let's take a quick breather. Let's let those ideas sink in, perhaps. Go get some water and then immediately close our mouth flaps, perhaps,
fucking
guys.
Close it. What the hell?
Let's stay focused.
Come on.
You'll die listening to this podcast if you leave your mouth flap open.
If you have it closed, you'll only lose a thimble full of water listening to our entire episode.
That's
library.
Right. That's right. So let's take a quick breather, but don't go anywhere. We will be back in just a minute.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your break. Hope your fucking mouth flaps are sealed.
Sealed!
Did you not listen to Moneo? We're gonna unseal our mouth flaps for a second because we're gonna eat our spice morsels now. And our first spice morsel of the day. Hope you like eating sand, folks, because this first morsel is desert locations.
Ooh.
Or dessert locations with too many S's. Delicious. During their trek across the sand, Leto muses that they're moving northwest along a track that led to a number of long-lost desert locations, right? Places long gone to time. And each of the locations he names are notable in Dune lore, so we are going to crack open our official history books, not the oral history, that one's forgotten. We're going to learn more about these locations.
Right.
Now, one of the places he mentions is Habanya Ridge, or Cave of Birds. And this is the location where Paul went after his successful first worm ride in the first book. Quote, we'll camp for the evening meal and prayer at Cave of Birds beneath Habanya Ridge, Stilgar said. End quote. This is also where he reunited with Gurney and where The troubadour held Jessica at knife point when he still
Ugh.
thought she was a traitor. You fucking idiot. This is also where they captured Otto Ramsham, right?
That's right.
This is also Jesus, this area. This is where Paul went into his coma,
Oh my
fully
goodness.
awakened as the Kwisatz Haderach abilities. Shout out to the
Pivotal.
Kwisatz Haderach design I did for our merch store, which
Yeah.
apparently is back up. Technically, that is the moment that he awakens. So he
Yes.
is in the Cave of Birds at that moment. And then finally, the Cave of Birds became Paul's command center after he declared himself Duke of Arrakis and began his final assault against the Harkonnen
Right.
forces.
Wow.
So, where
So
he
much went down
assembled all
here.
of the Nabes and he said, "Hey, y'all know that I could 1v1 solo you, right?"
Right.
And
Right.
everyone's like, "Yeah, you totally could." And he's like, "Sweet, Duke
Sweet.
of the planet." That's the Cave of Birds. Big deal.
Yeah.
And also,
A
we've probably
major area.
seen this in the trailers for part 2.
Yes. We very likely have.
Beautiful skylights, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jessica observes in the first book, the Cave of Birds is a tactily sound location because just to the north is Wind Pass.
Mm.
Quote, and to the north lay Wind Pass, opening onto a protected village in a cliff-walled sink. It was a key village, home of artisans and technicians, maintenance center for an entire Harkonnen defensive sector. End quote.
Wow. There you go.
Very cool. Wind Pass. Nice. And finally, we have False Wall West. And this is in Children of Dune. It is revealed that False Wall is where a band of smugglers have a siege aptly named Tuix Siege.
Yes, our boy.
Fuck yeah. Bro, I love the Tuix. The Tuix are
Yeah.
great. And Gurney escapes to this location after his deadly showdown with Namri.
Right.
So very, very cool. Love the history upon history upon history. We see the characters we knew and
Yeah.
the places we knew sustaining and living through the centuries.
And all of these pivotal locations no longer there.
Yeah, exactly to the opposite of what I just said accidentally. These locations are all gone.
They're all gone. They
But-
only exist in Leto's memory now.
They exist in his memory.
And ours.
And hey, even Leto says after he's gone, Pearl of Consciousness, these locations will exist forever in
That's
the
right.
memories of the Sand Tribe.
Cave
Part
of
two.
Birds stands. Rise up.
Hell yeah. Everyone flash your Cave of Birds tattoos.
All right, let's talk about our second morsel today, Gallic.
Woo!
Now, Duncan recalls Moneo's messy ass work desk in his office. It's
Yeah.
full of clutter. There's all these sheets of crystal paper scattered everywhere. And on this crystal paper is notes and diagrams of every variety written in Gallic and various other languages.
Yeah.
Now, Gallic is the primary fictional language of the Dune universe. It's what the characters have spoken since the first book. So let's learn a little bit more about it. The Dune Encyclopedia makes it clear that Gallic was the dominant language in the Imperium. Quote, Gallic held an unquestioned supremacy as the language of culture and the arts. It was the official language of the Imperium and the native tongue of billions of speakers on the settled worlds. Studied as a second language in thousands of schools, it was the language of law and military and the pathway to political and social advancement. End quote.
Damn. Cool.
Very crucial. If you
Yeah.
exist in the Dune universe, you have to know Gallic to get anywhere. Now, in addition to what the Dune Encyclopedia tells us, the glossary at the end of the first book also gives us a really great definition of Gallic. It says that Gallic is, quote, the official language of the Imperium, hybrid Anglo-Slavic with strong traces of cultural specialization terms adopted during the long chain of human migrations, end quote.
Yeah.
So it's interesting there to sort of get its Earth origins or Earth inspirations, Anglo-Slavic. It's a combination of those two, or at least it was at the beginning, because as that definition states, it went through many different variations over the thousands and thousands and thousands of years that Gallic was used. And to very quickly and briefly go over the different timelines of Gallic, early on, in 7000 to 4000 BG, the language was known as Old Gallic, and then it evolved into early Middle Gallic from 4000 to 1000, and then later it became Middle Gallic, which is appropriate, from 1000 BG to 3000 AG once we cross over into AG. And then a few thousand years more pass, and eventually it becomes late Middle Gallic. And then finally, in modern times, what the Dune Encyclopedia defines as 7000 to 11,000 AG, it's called Atradian Gallic. And I found this last point interesting and a bit confusing
Sure.
because the timeline seems fuzzy. Paul didn't ascend to the throne until around 10,193 ish. And it's hard to believe that for 3,000 years before that, ever since 7,000, that the Atreides had such a monumental effect on the language that it was literally named Atradian Gallic. I can understand it being named Atradian Gallic after Paul rises to the throne and the
Yeah.
Atreides become
Yeah.
rulers. Before 10,000 AG, though, I don't know why it would be called that. So that could just be a bit of a timeline error in the encyclopedia.
It could also, I mean, again, the encyclopedia is an in universe document and it's written by people like
Yeah,
even after God Emperor of Dune. So you already think about how much history is kind of fuzzy and how much the people are debating with the oral history and they're going, oh, the
yeah,
official histories and blah, blah, blah. So it's possible that, again, like anything, the Atreidian influence on the empire has ballooned over the years and is now
very true.
perceived as being much bigger than it was. We know they were just another great house that were like somewhat influential within the Landsraad at the time of Paul's birth toward 10,191 AG. But 5,000 years later, 6,000 years later, people might say, well, the Aztecs, everyone in the world knew the Aztecs.
Of
And it's like,
course.
you're like, well, yeah, they were very successful and big, but it's not, the indigenous in Australia weren't talking about the Aztecs.
Great point.
I see it as that, but it's possible, there's maybe some other explanation. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. It's a historical document, so there's got to be room for error. And I'm sure the Dune historians in universe are just spitballing these dates.
Yeah.
Now, as a last point about this morsel, for anyone who is interested and can get their hands on a copy of the Dune Encyclopedia, it goes so ridiculously in depth about the evolution of all of these forms of Gallic. And we highly recommend that you check it out because holy shit, we need your help deciphering what the fuck any of this means. It
Yeah.
is like so deep into pronunciation and pronoun changes and evolution of spelling and all of these like charts about Gallic tracing it across these thousands of years and how it changed. Most of it is like gibberish to me because I'm no linguistic master, but if you happen to be, check out the encyclopedia and email us your knowledge.
Especially if you have a background in conlang, that's sort of like creating fictional languages. I'm sure
Yes,
there's quite a bit there.
totally. So that's our second morsel, a little bit about Gallic.
Indeed. Well, listeners, for our next episode, it's time we assign your reading, and today's a little bit different
Uh-huh.
because what you will have to read is whatever you write to us. Hey,
Hey!
look at that. Write us questions because next episode is a mailbag episode.
That's right.
So either use the mailbag questions channel in Discord or send us an email.
Yeah.
gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your questions from the reading, things you want to hear more about. We will be choosing some emails in the coming weeks to feature in that episode. So
That's right.
reach out to us. And listen, if you're a public listener, if you're a listener who has not yet joined the Patreon and you're hearing this episode in the late 24th century, when this episode finally comes out for you, worry not, assuming we're still around and still podcasting in the years from now that this episode's going to come out. We are planning on continuing to do mailbag episodes, so feel free to send us your questions as well. We'll include them in one of our public mailbag episodes.
For sure. And on that note, we have a couple of reminders before we let you go on how to support us and keep in touch.
Indeed.
And the best way to do so is to support us on Patreon. Become a patron at patreon.com/gomjabar. You get cool benefits like completely ad-free episodes, weekly blooper clips, an invite to our Discord server where people are popping off,
Yeah.
especially after that Lego set dropped. What the
Oh my
fuck?
God. Exciting.
Patreon.com/ComJabar. It's the best way to support us and to get some nice perks. We'd love your support if you're in a financial place to do so.
Indeed. Now, another great way to support the show is to get yourself some Dune-themed merchandise from our store, which is officially back up at gomjabarshop.com. We've got art, we've got apparel, we've got some mugs, a pint glass, which looks pretty fucking sweet,
It does.
tote bag, other things, stickers, decals, things like that. Check it out. Feel free to get yourself something sweet, especially the holiday season's coming up. But also, let us know if you have a better merch platform or if there's any merchandise that we don't have that you'd like to see. Hit us up. Send us an email. Ping us on Discord.
Yeah, let us know. gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com is our email, folks. One last reminder on that. Send us your thoughts. Send us your questions for future mailbag episodes. Send us anything. We'd love to hear from you. We do our best to respond to every single email, which means we're very slow at responding to emails, but we will get around to it eventually.
Indeed.
So get in touch. gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, send us reminders to seal our fucking mouth flaps, because I definitely
That's
forget
right.
time and time again.
Yeah, honestly. Actually, can we make that someone's job from
Yeah.
our listeners? Like, just email us every week.
Just, hey
Put
guys,
on your mouth flap.
mouth flap
You're
up.
wasting water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If one of you could really get on that, just like a weekly reminder email. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Like the subject can literally say no subject, and then the body of the email can just be mouth flap.
I'm like, is this flirting? What is this?
Well, friends, there is no real ending. It's just the place where you stop the recording. But this podcast is always one step beyond logic, so help spread the word of Muad'Dib and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party, and we are on TikTok at Gomjabar Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, whoever controls the podcast controls the universe. We'll see you